professionalism in YouTubing since 2018. So this is Bob Point's photo report of the excellent Altibash 7 event that took place at the Forge in Manchester. What an excellent venue that is. I highly recommend anybody getting along there to take a look at it. The fresh carpet or new carpet smell, for a start, was well worth travelling up the M6. And of course, as a newcomer to the Kings of War community, always a bit intimidating going to these things, first of all, but I was made to feel most welcome by everybody there, by the organizer, Kev. Thank you to you. So prior to this, I'd played one game of Kings of War against Aid, which was 1,500 points, using my undead against his Kingdom of Men. That did end up in a win for me, but purely through luck rather than judgment. Neither of us knew what we were doing, but we had a great time. It's spoiler alert, I've fallen head over heels for Kings of War, alongside all the other Mantic games, but I suspected I would enjoy it from having watched countless battle reports, listened to dozens of podcasts on the subject. But there's no doubt this is an excellent game, by far the best rank and flank fantasy game that I've ever played, and probably the best fantasy game I've ever played. So the format of Altibash 7 was 1,250 points, timed games, 40 minutes per player, and using the Clash of Kings 2019 update to the rules that came out at the back end of last year. The picture here is my first game against the ever wonderful Dr. Dead Zone, Andy Sharp, who's been away from Kings of War. He was telling me for some time. I think he may have got a practice game in during the week, but other than that, he was saying it's roughly 18 months since he had played the game. And he got 1,250 points of goblins, beautiful goblins with what looks like full model count, multi-basing, as opposed to mine, which is closer to preferred or even minimum model count. But this was the first game. I believe the scenario was invade, so essentially you had to get the most. You had to get your units halfway across the table into your opponent's half, and whoever got the most, the greater unit strength in the opponent's half would win the game. Unit strength was a new concept to me, but just very quickly, troops count as 1 unit strength, regiments 2, hordes and legions 3, and that's as simple as it gets, really. Individuals and war machines having no unit strength to speak of. So yes, he was using goblins. I'm not completely familiar, I have to say, with any other list than my own. I'm not entirely familiar with my own, but I shall very quickly try to make out what's showing there at the top of the picture with the goblins. There's certainly a horde of infantry on the right there, in the top right. I think they may have been spitters, something like that, and then a huge unit of goblins riding more beasts. I think they're called fleabag riders, something like that. I suspect most of this have got archery, actually, or bows. And then I think this next horde along to the left of the hill there was a character's unit. I can't quite remember what the name of that was, but again, another big horde. Then we've got a regiment of spitters, which is the goblin bows, and then another unit of the fleabag riders with bows on the end. Just at the back there, you can see a troop of Fleabag riders. Character-wise, there's the Wiz standing on the hill in front of the war trombone, and then there's a character on a Fleabag just over on the right-hand side there between the two hordes. My army, and I'll just go through this once for the purpose of the video, had 2 troops of whites, a troop of revenants, a regiment of regiments down there on the left-hand side moving along. We've got 2 hordes of zombies and then a horde of werewolves. My 2 characters in between the revenants and the zombie horde, we've got the Revenant King, and then between the 2 zombie hordes, we've got a necromancer. So you'll see over to the left-hand side there the clock, which shows 38 minutes and 50 odd seconds for me and 38 minutes 33 seconds for Andy. That's basically the time that it's taken us to deploy our army onto the table. You switch backwards and forwards, hitting the chess clock to stop your own clock and passing it over to the other player. So we both took a similar amount of time for that. This must be the end of my first turn, where I've just basically advanced everything down the table, the 2 hordes. Having no experience whatsoever of this game, the sole line of thinking I got was that the 2 zombie hordes could sit in the middle of the table and hopefully hold out against whatever would come across at me long enough for me to come around the flank and get some flank charges in and complete whatever objective, whichever scenario we were playing. So you can see that I've moved both troops of whites who have got the fly special ability down the left and right flank respectively. The revenants have moved up, just holding off at an angle there behind the zombie hordes who've just boldly marched on, and the werewolves are down the right there with the whites. You can see Andy is just about to get going on his first turn. This must be now my second turn, Andy having taken the charge into the zombie horde and scored 7 points of damage on me. My second zombie horde there on the left, which is now perpendicular to the unit, charged into the flank. They've suffered 10 points of damage. That may have been from the war trombone. That was an interesting experience, seeing what that does. It is rather deadly, and I can see why TOs I'll run 1995 point events to prevent goblins taking 3 of those, because they are rather tasty. It looks like I've done quite a bit of damage to that Beast Fleabag rider unit in the middle. That is really great. There's a good picture coming up to show the guy standing on that rock, which is right in the middle of the unit. I say that because he's got 2 counters there. I think they either go up to 10 or 12. So Andy's had to put a second counter down there. So I'm certainly into double figures on the damage that I've done to that unit. Elsewhere, Andy has refused his right flank down on the left of the picture at the top, and angled his unit, his horde, on the right-hand side, on his left flank, the right as we look at it, towards my whites. I've presented that flank of the werewolves who are in the wood, thinking that either he's going to take on the whites with the charge and see them off, which will leave my werewolves to go into the flank of this Fleabag unit, or he'll take the flank and then I'll come into his flank with my whites. That was the plan. I'm not entirely sure there's anything sound about that plan at all, but that was the thinking. So here's that picture that I was talking about. Absolutely lovely unit there with the Beast jumping off that rock, ready to tear apart some unfortunate victim that he's going to land on. All mantic models in both armies, actually. So my undead army is entirely mantic, and as is Andy's goblins, and they are lovely. That real horde effect. I don't know how many figures are on there. 3, 6, 8, 9. There's way over 20 more beast riders, fleabag riders on that unit. Here we go then. So we can see that my zombie horde, the left-hand zombie horde, has gone. I suspect they were shot off by something and then failed the nerve test. My werewolves haven't moved in the wood there, which is interesting. And certainly the whites on the left hand, on the right hand, my right hand flank have been seen off by that horde of goblin troops. There are now poised to come in onto the flank of my werewolves, but hopefully I have a feeling I'm about to go into the flank of the fleabag riders. Werewolves have obviously been hit by something. They've got 4 points of damage there. I suspect that's from the war trombone. But the zombie horde in the middle are looking fairly sound at the moment. They're only on 7 wounds. They've got 22 nerves, so relatively safe at the moment. The revenants don't look like they've done much, and the left-hand troop of whites are just about to angle the way around to take on that unit of fleabag riders right over on the left-hand side of the picture there, before they start shooting. And now you can see that the whites have moved into the fleabag riders. Just move back picture there. So yeah, the revenants moving across from the left have seen off that troop of fleabag riders. The werewolves have taken the charge on the war trombone. That was quite a nice moment to get that out of the way. That was causing me some significant problems. Which does leave Andy's horde on the right-hand side, that unit of goblins there. I'm not entirely sure what they are, stabbers or stickers or something. They've got goblins with spears by the looks of it. A little bit out of the way, although I have a feeling Andy then turns them around and just marches them across the table to satisfy some of the victory conditions for the invade scenario. And I'm rather pleased to say my zombie horde in the middle of there are still sticking around, and they've dropped down to 6 wounds now using there's either a heal spell from the necromancer or life leech, which I managed to remember a few times and get them healed back up, which was rather nice. So here we go. Yes, on the right hand side you can see Andy's goblins are ignoring the rest of the battle line and just marching for victory to satisfy the invasion victory conditions. My werewolves, having taken out the war trombone, coming across from the right hand side there, they've taken that out and pivoted round, and have now got a rather tasty charge into the flank of that large horde of goblin infantry. I say, I think they are a character unit. Some interesting advice came to me after the game from Andy about this, and spoiler alert, the werewolves do go into the flank of that unit, but probably unnecessarily, because, as you can see, that unit is rather surrounded by the zombie horde, are still only on 9 wounds and still hanging around and no danger at the moment of getting taken off, and the revenants are actually unharmed, and the revenant king there also to support on the flank. That's going to be a very tasty charge and make very short work of the goblin horde in front of me. So it was a little bit of overkill to send those werewolves in. Moving over onto the left, you can see my troop of whites there have seen off the fleabag riders. It looks like a goblin character of some sort. I can't quite remember what he is. And the goblin archers there, the spitters, stuck behind that fence. I don't think they do much else for the rest of the game. So yes, here we go. We can see that the undead have gone into that charge, clearly caused some wounds. Can't quite see what on that round dial that Andy uses to count wounds, just how much they've done. I'm not quite sure why the revenants haven't gone in there. I've clearly focused on that combat for some reason. And now we see the inevitable result that the that unit disappears. On the left-hand side, you can see the whites have just flown down table against satisfy victory conditions for the invasion scenario. I did send the werewolves in and pivoted them so that they are facing the opposite direction to the rest of my army. So they're facing towards my baseline, whilst the zombies and the revenants are facing the other way. But Andy at this point is down to the unit of spitters behind the fence, 2 characters, and the unit which is off camera to the right hand side there, getting some victory points for him. There they are. Just sitting there quite happily whilst their mates fight the good fight. So that was the end of that game. It turned into a victory for me, which nobody was more surprised than myself that I actually won a game. Andy's dice weren't great, I have to say. As he admitted previously, he was quite rusty on the rules. And my dice clearly favoured me, which is most unusual. And I came out with a victory. I think it was something like 3-1 or something on the unit strength side of things across the table. No, it might have been more than that actually, because the zombie horde, werewolf horde, that would be 6. The revenant 7, 8, and the troop of whites is 1 as well. So it was quite a handy victory. And the problem with winning your first game at any event, of course, is that you face somebody else who won their first game rather handily, and that's always bad news for me, to be honest. Whenever it's happened to me, I've usually met somebody far above my skill level. In fact, Andy's really far above my skill level, but I took the win and Andy took the loss with grace and a smile on his face. That was great. It's the first time I've played Andy. I've met him a couple of times now, and communicated online. He's a great bloke and does great things for the community. So well done to you. So I'm going to click this now. You may have had a spoiler. Here we go. So it's Ian Davis of Frantic Gamers fame. This is his list, which is Forces of the Abyss. I had no idea what this could do. I soon found out. As a highlight on there, 2 things really impressed me on the list, which I will need to make note of and come up with some way of dealing with in the future. One is the Tortured Souls unit with the fly special rule. I was rather amazed when I saw them coming 20 inches over the table to charge into a unit. Spoiler alert. And also the Ifrit with Fireball 16. That is bonkers. Kings of War certainly isn't a game of hero hammer. It's about units. It's about rank and flanks. It's not about the individuals, but individual heroes can have an impact. And Fireball 16 hitting on 4, so that'll be 8 hits and probably 4 wounds on a unit with defense 4, something like that. Maybe 1 or 2 less for higher defenses, but that's pretty tasty coming from an individual. So here we go. This is Ian's setup. These are a large unit of abyssals with some gargoyles behind them, and there's the Ifrit, as I mentioned, ready to come and do some murder. There's the Tortured Souls on the left, and then 3 units of Succubi. So we've got 2 troops of Succubi and a regiment, and then a winged character of sorts there. I'm not quite sure what was. And my deployment, so it's very similar to the first game's deployment, with the 2 zombie hordes in the middle, flanked by the 2 troops of wraiths. Werewolves behind the wraiths here. I wasn't quite sure why I've done that, or why I put the revenants behind this difficult ground. Yeah, I suspect deployment wasn't a strong point here. Just wanted to get a close-up of the painting there for me. An excellent painting on that figure. Lovely figure with the blue fire coming from him, or her even. So first turn, I forget what the scenario was here, but the green tokens are objectives that you have to be within. You have to have greater unit strength within at the end of the game to score the points. Yeah, I'm pretty sure I just went to pieces in this game. I really should have done a little bit better. Anywho, we have the 2 zombie hordes advancing. I've started to wheel that left-hand horde around to sort of tempt some action from those left-hand units of Ian's at the top left of the picture there, or on his right flank. My rays have moved across there, hoping not to get charged by the gargoyles behind, but probably going to expect a fireball from the Ifrit. And then Ian has very cunningly turned his center to his left flank and is going to contest in this sort of empty space in between our 2 forces. Go back one there we go. That's just another shot across the line, showing you the relative positions. So as previously mentioned, that this unit of tortured souls, which has got into the flank of the werewolves, that was a real shocker, going from, as you can see on the edge of the wood here, all the way across the table, across the front of my revenants, and into the werewolves, getting the flank charge. And we've got the succubi going in the front, and yeah, that didn't end well. They were one-shotted off the table, which came as a bit of a shock to me. So those tortured souls are not to be trifled with. So I've swung here the unit of the horde of zombies around, looking to get some action and delaying action, really, I suppose, on all these succubi units. But I was getting really concerned here about the revenants and why it's been able to hold off the tortured souls. It's getting a bit cramped around here for Ian to be able to get anything in to support the tortured souls, but I think I'd really begun to panic at this point. Here we can see the zombies have just carried on trundling. They've taken some significant damage there from the Ifrit, and the unit of wraiths here haven't left the table. They've actually moved behind this wall here. I'm thinking about trying to hold one of these objectives, but it was a bit too early in the game for that, and probably unnecessary. So there they are. You can see them heading towards these central green counters. I made pretty poor use of my 2 characters, the Necromancer and the Revenant King. I completely forgot I'd given Wings of the Honeymaze, for instance, to the Revenant King, which would allowed him greater mobility across the table with flight. And I think that was a theme throughout all the games, actually. So at some points wasted. So here Ian is checking some angles. As you can see, my zombie horde have been hit in the front and on their left flank by succubi troops. The regiment of succubi are hanging around the rear there, and the tortured souls, I can't see what the number is on that wound dice there at the back, the yellow wound dice, but I've clearly not done enough to see them off. The revenants are in against them, the whites standing around rather ineffectively, it must be said. There's a picture of the Ifrit with the fireball 16. It's rather a blurred picture. There we go. So I've eventually seen off the tortured souls, but it's taken a lot of work to get rid of them. And in return, you will see a big empty space where my zombie horde regiment used to be. And then I've also, for some reason, charged my Revenant King in against Ian's flying character model here. And I can't remember the name of it, but it's pointed out after that was probably unnecessary and the Revenant King could have been put to much better use. I tend to agree. So Ian's regiment of Succubi are going to come in and take on the unit of raids here. They've already taken 6 points of damage. The Revenant Kings are fairly untouched, but we can see what's going to happen to them very shortly with the 2 troops of Succubi lurking around, and there's certainly one flank charge open to them if they've got the movement. Over to the right, to my left flank, this large unit, this horde of abyssals, have come into my zombies. And you can see the relative wound tokens there. I've only managed 6 wounds on his horde, whereas I'm sitting on 13 on the zombies, and they're certainly hitting the danger zone at that point. There's an overall picture of the battlefield. Ian feeling rather calm and complacent about the situation. Me thinking, oh my goodness, it's all over. So let's just go back and just have a look there. So my raids over on the right-hand side have been made short work of by this unit, by the rightmost unit of Succubi, the regiment. My revenants have now got a unit to the front and a unit to the rear. Rear attacks are not to be recommended in Kings of War if you're on the receiving end of them, tripling the attacks as they do. To try and minimize and save some face, I've faced the revenants are actually facing the regiment, leaving the troops, the troop unit to the rear to minimize the number of attacks. But it's going to be a foregone conclusion. They're already on 10 wounds there. They aren't long for this world. Neither were the zombie horde, so both zombie hordes gone. I've got the abyssals up to 10 wounds there, and the rays are untouched, but it's small consolation. Gargoyles are back there. I don't think have moved throughout the game really. Just getting ready to pounce on one of the objectives. A nice bit of product placement there with the Frantic Con drinks bottle, which we very kindly were given at the end of the Franticon event down in London. So there is no surprise to see that the Revenants go, and my Revenant King is now in a bit of a pickle. He'll be going down to that unit of Succubi. So on the table at this point, my Necromancer is gone. I suspect the Ifrit saw him off, and the Revenant King is the last model left. There he is, taken off the table, and that is the end of that game, unfortunately. That was a crushing defeat, tabled by Ian, who knows his army. He knows the rules. He's a veteran gamer. He's a gentleman too. He did it with a smile. Corrected a couple of little shenanigan moves that I'd carried out inadvertently with greater wheels or pivots than I was allowed to do, just to remind me that I need to clean my game up to be a bit more precise with movement, which is absolutely fair point. But I've played in now in 3 or 4 different games, and each one has been great fun. So thank you, Ian, for that. Moving on to my game 3, and I am up against the League of Nethathongia. This is a Rordia list, as you can see there, and it's run by the inimitable, the Foulmouth occasionally, but very funny and friendly chap that is Mr. Ross Diggle, with a very nice painted very nicely painted Rordia army. Virtually, I think it's all metal. The only one I think that might not be metal is the whiskey golem from Malifaux that Ross copied off Andy Ransom. But it's a lovely army, and in the hands of a trained expert such as Ross, you will see that it was a bit of a struggle for me to know what to do against it. A large army there. I can't quite make out what we've got. Let's see if we can do. So it looks like 1, 2, certainly 2, maybe 3 hordes of infantry, 4 hordes of infantry. In fact, let's go back to the list, shall we? There you go. We've got 2 hordes of halfling braves, 2 hordes of halfling archers. I mean, look at that, 20 shots each from them, 25 attacks from each of those hordes. 2 troops of household knights, melee 3, defense 5, 8 attacks each. Their nerve isn't fantastic, but they've got Blade of Slashing and Mace of Crushing, which certainly help the halfling Iron Beast there. As Ross pointed out, it's really a bit of a magnet for enemy units who feel that the Iron Beast is quite a threat, and it certainly can dish out some pain, but it's one unit, and I certainly fell into the trap of being attracted to try and take it out as early as possible. Now we've got 2 characters. We've got a Master Sergeant and a Baron, so no magic user in his list, but 1 or 2 items there to assist. So again, familiar theme, the 2 hordes are together in the center there for me, the 2 zombie hordes with the revenants and werewolves over to the left, and I have a troop of wraiths on either flank with the characters sitting at the back there trying to support and buff the units. And you can see a nice picture of the halflings. I think they're from a couple of different manufacturers, certainly Westphalia is one of them. I forget, Assault Group, I think some of the cavalry are from. I can't quite remember what the other firm were. I'll try and look that up and put it in the notes. There you go. It's very nicely painted, very very stylish, Mr. Diggle. We've just got a few action shots here because I was certainly tempted into the charge, which I suspect he'd set up for me to take on that central hill there. You can see the zombie horde's already taken a battering around 13 wounds. The one on the left there down to 4, taken 4 wounds, but without a lot of success. And we have a bit of a duel in the middle here with it's either the Baron or the Sergeant. I can't remember which character was on the horse. Charging against my necromancer, who really shuts down my ability to support my units with the spells that he has. And the Revenant King really just standing there thinking, what on earth is going on? There we go. Little shot of the zombies going into the halflings. Halflings doing some significant damage to the zombie horde in the center. The wraiths, for some reason, charging in on their own against that rabble of halflings in front of me, and the flank charge coming in from. Oh yes, he's also mounted, so it's either the Baron or the Sergeant there, charging in on what looks like to be a little warthog or something. Yeah, so I've actually had a little bit of success here over on the left, seeing away that horde. And only taking 4 points of damage, which is quite nice. But the horde in the centre, as I say, not much longer for this world. There's now flank charge coming from the cavalry. You can see the Iron Beast has gone into the Revenants. My Whites have managed to hang in there somehow. My Revenant King's actually got off his backside and gone in for some mano-a-mano combat with the the halfling character. And there's my Whites coming around to show the face and hopefully scare somebody. I've not managed to take out this little fella on the warthog, which is a bit embarrassing for a Revenant King, if I'm to be honest. Hello. Hello. Hi. Yeah, just leaving. Ah, okay. Yes, she's in bed. Yeah, yes, we're going to have a nice night, actually. Yes. I know, I know. Well, I thought it was a scarf when she opened it, to be honest. Yeah. No, she saw it, but she still thought it was a scarf until I pointed it out. All right. I'm just recording a video at the minute, doll, so if I don't come straight down to you, I'm still recording. All right, doll. See you later. Bye. Bye. Sorry about that. Wife has just finished work and has called me. So hopefully I edit that out. And I'm now talking to myself because you'll never hear it. So Revenant King, yes, struggling to take on that guy. Amazingly, this zombie horde is still hanging around with that flank charge and the halflings to the front. Such a lot of character in those halfling figures. Oh, very nice. Yeah, so that's the state of play. Probably just over halfway through the game. That's an interesting one, isn't it? Yeah. So the zombie horde in the middle went. The halflings have then turned and taken on my left-hand zombie horde. The cavalry have managed to get a charge into my wraiths. My necromancer's still waved and tied up by the halfling character there on the horse, and there's not much else occurring. Yeah, you can see my the Iron Beast is now into my wraiths. I killed very little, I think, of Ross's during this game. A masterful performance. Little flank charge, cheeky flank charge coming in from those cavalry that have seen off my raids on the left-hand side. The Raves on the right, I managed to hold on against the Iron Beast, and the Revenant King's now going in to try and take them on, but it's all in vain, I'm afraid. So that was end of game 3. So I'm on 1 loss and 2 losses and 1 win. And I've had 2 rather difficult games where I've not really had much of an idea in how to tackle the 2 forces that were in front of me. But here we go. So on to game 4. No, that's Ross's sheet, sorry. For the afternoon, I seem to forget taking pictures. We've had a spot of lunch at this point. But my afternoon game, and for some reason this is the first picture of it, was against the very charming Chris Carbon, another experienced Kings of War player. I believe he's won Altibash previously, which is never a good thing for me to find out about. But he's got a very elite, compact abyssal army in front of me. He's just moving some Heliquins to charge the zombie horde to the front. Spoiler alert, I've got 2 zombie hordes in the middle of the battlefield. My regiment of Wraiths there in the middle has been charged by Basusu, I think he is, the abyssal character. That fight will go on for a little while. The werewolves there have turned to face a charge from a very big, nasty, I think he's an arch fiend, a very big devilish, demonish type character that's going to come into shot very soon. And it's a damn fine model. Now you can see it. Really nice model that is. I need to get myself one of those. Just at the top of the picture, out of interest, you can see a unit of tortured souls, and I'm well aware of what those guys can do now. And really didn't manage to neutralize them at all. But the werewolves are about to get a charge. This is over on the other side. For another inexplicable reason, I put the revenants way out over on this flank, and they've got all this ground to cover to get to where the action is. Yeah, it's a real bad placing on my part. The zombies news to the camera here, but just about to mount this hill and come over, take some ground with a bit of luck. The raids are following up behind, and the zombie horde's taken that charge off the Heliquins, but there's those 2 units of tortured souls behind, and we can just see right over on the left hand side there the Archfiend about to make an appearance. That was the list, actually. So a troop of gargoyles, 2 regiments of tortured souls, the regiment of Heliquins, and the Archfiend of the Abyss with Basusu. So 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Only 6 drops there, and some quite expensive models making up the 1250 from Chrissy's army. Another picture of it for some reason. And there's some action. So my cunning plan to tempt him into charging the werewolves didn't work. They've gone. The Archfiend has charged right into the flank, and why not, of those zombies as it had presented itself, with the Heliquins to the front. Basusu is still in combat, mortal combat with the raids there, and we have some tortured souls now making an appearance over here on the just by the hill, about to take on some zombies. They are classed as large infantry, if you're wondering why. That's a regiment. That is a large infantry regiment base there. So those zombies don't really know what's about to hit them, I'm afraid, from those tortured souls, and the revenants with that expert placing over on the right-hand flank, just doing nothing. So unbelievably, the zombies haven't been destroyed. They've taken 14 wounds, mind, but the Archfiend and the Heliquins haven't destroyed it, which was quite pleasing, I have to say. But that's really poor positioning of the wheels there. They really should have been not facing that way. And Basusu and the Rays continue their slugfest there. So the Archfiend's decided he's had enough of the zombies and has decided to fly over and take on, I think he's in the flank of the zombie. Yes, he's in the flank of the zombie regiment, and just managed to squeeze in between the zombie horde and the necromancer and the rays, and to take on those zombies. My werewolves have finally got themselves into some action and taken a charge there by the tortured souls. But Susu and the Wraiths continue, as do the zombie horde and the Heliquins. Now you can see the close-up of the action as the Archfiend goes into the flank with tortured souls to the front. A little bit of tactical advice here. That isn't a position that I recommend. Pretty much the same situation there in that picture. And here we can see the zombies in the center have now gone, as has the tortured soul unit. So the werewolves saw them away, but unfortunately for the trouble, the werewolves have now got a unit of Heliquins with minimal damage. I can just see a dice there. It looks like there's 3 wounds on the unit. The Susu and the Wraiths are just trading blows backwards and forwards, and the Archfiend seems to be holding his own over on the right. So the zombie horde has gone. The revenants have finally come in and taken the hill. They've got the tortured souls in front of them. I've got the 2 characters behind the Archfiend with the Wraiths to the front of it, and some very sporting, a very sporting moment here from Chris, who taught me through the next phase of the game as we go into turn 4, as you can see there. I'm quite sure those tortured souls got over there, to be honest. So they fly over the table. I'm not quite sure why they ended up on the other side of that hill, going over the top of my revenants. But anyhow, that's where they were. The Archfiend and the Wraiths are still duking it out. I've still got the 2, my 2 heroes there. I suspect they're adding some spell support like Bane Chant or something to the Wraiths. Werewolves and the Heliquins still duking it out. The Wraiths have been finally finished off by Basusu, but you'll notice the Archfiend is missing. And this was quite interesting in that sorry, I'm going forward. I need to go back. Yes, excellence in video casting since 2018. This regiment of revenants on the top. Very kindly, Chris talked me through the steps where I needed to get this regiment into the Archfiend, which I would never have worked out myself. But as it turned out, it all paid off because the Archfiend was destroyed. Unfortunately, the Revenants were also destroyed in short order very soon after. As you can see, they've disappeared along with the Archfiend. And I suspect this is what I'm down left with now. The Werewolves have gone, and the Harlequins are there with Basusu and my Necromancer and Revenant King thinking, where's my army gone? And it was very short order for my Revenant King, those Tortured Souls, Basusu, to finish me off, and that was a tabling, unfortunately. That's just a picture that was there to remind me of the chess clock that seems to be in vogue, which I'll try and pick up at some point. And on to the last game then, game 5. So this was a race for the bottom, let's say. Having won one game at the start of the day, I've then followed it up with 3 rather crushing defeats. And for my troubles, I'm facing Mr. Moore here, James Moore, very nice gentleman, never met before, but a fine gentleman indeed to be facing in your final game at your inaugural tournament. As you can see, he has taken the undead route as well. A little bit of a different list, though, a more elite list than mine. He's got that troop of Soul Reaver infantry there with Brew of Courage, a horde of Revenants, interestingly. It was interesting to see how they went with the Banner of the Griffin. And then quite a lot of werewolves. So we've got a regiment and a horde of werewolves, with a Revenant King and Necromancer similar to myself, both of which using the weakness spell. And this really piqued my interest in that spell. It's not one I'd looked at before, but it certainly came in useful. I think one or the other of those characters will end up with weakness in the next event that I go to. And propping up the list, we've got the Lycanis, the werewolf character. So I've spread out across the table here, and interestingly, I've separated the zombie hordes with the revenants in the middle for some reason. No idea why. I've got the werewolves over to the right. You've got the wraiths just in camera shot there, and right over on the left-hand side is the other troop of wraiths. James has gone with the werewolves sticking together on his right flank, with the soul flanked by the Soul Reavers, and then the horde of revenants. There's another little shot of the field. You can just about see the troop of wraiths over on the left-hand side. So cracking on here, the werewolves just barreled across the table straight into this zombie horde. The wraiths have moved across here a little bit to the right, and so I know James was certainly worried that I'd be using them to charge the Lycanis, but I can't actually see him over the top of these. The werewolves are size 2, as is the Lycanis, but I can see across the top of the zombies into these werewolves, but I can't see beyond them, so that was unfortunate. And then there's a general advance across the board during James's first turn, so I gave him the first turn, I seem to remember. I made a real cock up over here on the right hand side. I planned the werewolves and the wraiths to come into the flank of this horde and see them off, but this werewolf unit should have been able to make a charge much earlier in the game, but for some reason I put this zombie horde too close, and they wouldn't have reached. So sorry, there wouldn't have been space for the werewolf horde to sit, but that's one of those mistakes that you make during a game. Turn 2. Nothing there, nothing to see. There we go. You can see the zombies have gone in. I've thought, well, I'm going to have to put something in against them, but I've moved them up too close previously, so I've surged them in to combat. They're going to get hindered charge there as they're going through the wood, and the werewolves were struggling there because they're in the front arc of the revenants. So although that there's that tasty flank looking there, tasty looking flank there, they can't actually charge there. So the zombies down here on the zombie horde down here on the left have taken significant damage, as would be expected from a regiment and a horde of werewolves, and they're up to 16, needing a 6 to break them. I've managed to put a little bit of damage by the looks of it on the werewolf horde, and there's a little bit of damage there on the revenant horde, but the soul reavers are untouched, as are the Lacanists and the werewolf regiment. Now you can see some skeleton on zombie action, always worth a look. And here we can see just how much trouble these zombies are in. But are they? Let's see. And me really thinking to myself, what on earth have I done there? That was a real tactical error. The Wraiths are in a good position there to get the flank charge, but I should have performed a little bit better there. So in the middle, you can see the zombie horde. My zombie horde has been seen off by the revenants. The werewolves are just about to come into shot there, as is the very edge there of the wraiths about to come in and do some damage. The revenants are hovering around this combat over here on the left-hand side, looking, wondering if they're going to get an opportunity to get into these guys. You can see the damage that the zombies have taken. Look at that. That is 26 points of damage. They'd actually taken a few more, but James hadn't rolled the dice because they were he'd gone over the 22 needed to mean that the nerve check needed a double 1. Now, fortunately, the zombies were inspired. I don't know if we can see a picture of where my Revenant King is. There he is, just down the bottom. It's not moved much further up from that shot. And although so the first roll broke the zombies, but because of inspired, that needed a re-roll. And yes, folks, James rolled a double 1, meaning they hung around, which was marvelous. And there you can see the werewolves and so the regiment and the horde backing away. Get back. Here you can see a big gap where the revenants have broken, thanks to the charge from the whites and the werewolves. I'm looking rather good in this position, you'd think, because I've got revenants, regiment of revenants, troop of wraiths, horde of werewolves, troop of wraiths, and there's only the soul reavers and 2 characters in shot here. The zombies are up to a ridiculous amount of damage at this point, but are about to be seen off. You can see the revenants have now turned to come in and take that flank, knowing that the reavers will come in and take theirs, but it was a real good chance to get rid of this horde of werewolves. So you can see we've got some damage on the werewolves. I can't remember quite how much there was, but the battle has certainly swung around. Just out of interest, I think I've forgotten in the last couple of games to mention the scenario. This was the loot scenario where you need to carry a token of loot into the enemy's half of the table. We roll for just 1 loot counter each, so my loot counter is on the revenants here. This token in the center is the central loot token, and there's another one underneath this horde of werewolves, which they should have picked up at that point. I'm not quite sure why they didn't, just forgotten, I think. But yeah, so and the revenants look like they've been bane chanted. That little glass token there is my bane chant token. Let's see where we go. So there, as expected, the soul reavers have gone into the flank of my revenants. I've clearly not managed to see off this zombie horde where I was hoping to get the flank charge on them. I don't know quite what happened there. But my zombie horde are still around with a gazillion wounds on them. I think that is an official number, and that's how many wounds they had, but they were hanging around. Still there, as you can see. I'm not sure what James is measuring, but it's something dastardly, no doubt, to bring about my downfall. And there we see a rather sad picture because the zombie horde has gone, as has the regiment of revenants. Yeah, I've got my werewolves here with a token. I've got 2 units of wraiths, 2 troops of wraiths, and certainly 1 character. I'm not sure where the Revenant King is there. That's my necromancer. But the Lycanis is about to come in. It looks like he's about to go into the wraiths. No, he goes for a bit of wolf on wolf action, which was interesting. My 2 troops of wraiths are still floating around there, and this unit of soul reavers are waiting to do some bloody murder. Ah, there's the Revenant King. No idea what he's doing back there. So Soul Reaver's going to the raids. The wolf on wolf action continues. These raids, I've got one of the tokens, really should be flying off this way, taking that token out of the way of any other action to guarantee a point, but no, I can't resist. And one troop of raids is wiped out, and there's a double charge then on the second unit of raids there from the Werewolf Regiment and the Soul Reaver troop. And I've got 2 characters there just hanging around, pretty much impotent, and the wolf on wolf action continues. Going towards the end of the game now. Looks like there's going to be a double charge from the werewolf horde onto my werewolves, with supported by the Lycanis. There we go. And in fact, the Soul Reavers have seen off one of the troops of raids and has joined in on the flank of those werewolves. The regiment of werewolves taken have charged towards the 2 characters that I've got left, and it's looking pretty grim at this point. There we go. You can see the action. There's 10 wounds on the werewolves. I think there are 18 nerves, so they're about to receive a considerable amount of pain. And there we go. They're destroyed, leaving me just the 2 characters on the table for the end of the game, with the regiments charging into me. There they go. I don't think it goes much further than that. And here we have a shot of the winner. It's a bit of a moody shot there. You can see the light streaming in through the window. We've got a beautiful profile of Kev Honeysett and our winner, Andy Ransom. This video report is somewhat of a homage to Andy's channel. It's nowhere near as polished or as smooth as what he prepares on a almost weekly basis with the amount of events he goes to. He won. I came bottom of the pile, so it's how not to play Kings of War in my instance. I highly recommend you get over to Andy's site and check out how to play Kings of War properly. There he is, walking back with his prize, looking rather pleased with himself. Beautiful shot there. Really good day. I didn't walk away. I didn't walk away empty-handed. Having come come bottom, I won myself a rather tasty. Excuse me. Let's just stop the screen share. There we go. That's me back in the room with a rather tasty meat tenderizer, actually, for being the strongest player at the event, and a copy of Vanguard, which is always useful. So that was my first event. I do apologize for the quality of this webcam. It's pretty shocking on the computer. I hope to pick up another one should I choose to do another one of these reports. I had a great time. It was really, really interesting to get to play Kings of War in the environment, which is probably designed to be played really at an event in the main. I appreciate this. You can play the fluffy games and the scenario-driven games, story narrative-driven games, which I'm very interested in. I hope to do some of in the very near future. But it's such a strong, tight set of rules that it does welcome, does lend itself to competitive play, and that certainly came across. I'm not going to carry on the broadcast much longer because the quality of this webcam is pretty shocking, but I hope it's been of some use. If you liked it, press the like button. If you don't like it, press the dislike button. And hopefully I'll be back with a few more updates, maybe a couple of unboxings, a couple of painting videos, progress on my painting challenge, and one or two other bits and pieces. But for now, thank you very much.